Hello, and welcome to the second GERSA podcast, GERSACast. I am Nick Golding, one of the GERSA founders and its CEO. And in the game of podcast musical chairs that we play at GERSA, I am your host today. We are joined by Nolan Cowzer, a fellow co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer Designate, and Glynne Stanfield, General Counsel Designate. Before we get into the conversation, I need to mention a few preliminaries. First, I'm very conscious that this is a manel, that is, a panel of men, and in fact that we're all white, male, and of a certain vintage that is past its prime. It's not a good look, I know. It was just how the cookie crumbled for this, and it's in no way represents our inclusive values, so please don't turn off your sets. Second, and full disclosure, the three of us have previous. Or rather, I have previous with each of Glynne and Nolan. Glynne and I have known each other, this gets a little bit awkward. Well, we've known each other since at least 1989 when he incorporated CATS for us. We subsequently worked together on numerous acquisitions and indeed failed ones at Cambridge Education Group, as well as the two big sales, first to Palomon and then to Bridgepoint. Glynne, remember those long nights in darkened rooms?
I do indeed, Nick. I do indeed. Yeah.
By contrast, Nolan is an alumnus of two of the colleges I founded. In fact, two of the ones that Glynne incorporated. CATS and Cambridge School of Visual and Performing Arts. Indeed, we edited the college magazine, Catalyst, together. Nolan, who'd have thought we would, all those 30 years later, be collaborating on other marketing output?
I think it's important to say that it's all your fault, Nick.
Oh, that's so much. So, I hope that at least excuses the manel, or at least explains it. As we embark upon GERSA together, the three of us have a curious but rather delicious bond of luck and fate. And now to our topics today. In their respective capacities, Glynne and Nolan have their own takes on GERSA and why they feel it is important and why they're getting involved. So Glynne, if I can turn to you first, tell us about your experience and what it is that you're going to bring to GERSA.
Well, Nick, I've been a lawyer for more years than I was a lawyer even prior to meeting you. So I'm afraid I'm rather long in the tooth, which means that I've been around the track a few times. And I've been involved in lots of ventures and lots of projects over the years. And I think that some of those projects have a real bearing on actually what GERSA is trying to do. So, for example, I was the lead lawyer in setting up the QAA many years ago, although after 1989. I also was the lead lawyer in setting up the OIA and the Crick Institute and the Alan Turing Institute as well. So all of those institutions were set up from scratch. So I really would like to sort of help GERSA to do the same thing, but this time to do it from the inside rather than from the outside. So that's what I think I sort of bring to the venture and why I want to be involved in it from the start.
You mentioned a number of bodies and institutes. Why are those particularly relevant to the work that GERSA is doing, apart from the fact that they're incorporated from scratch?
Yeah, okay. Well, certainly the QAA, the Quality Assurance Agency, I mean, the clue's in its name, isn't it? I mean, it's quality assurance. So it's a body which was originally set up to provide quality assurance to the UK education sector. And actually, if you look at what GERSA is about, it's a very similar aim and objective about ensuring high quality education for our British HE sector. And the OIA is very similar in some ways. It's a body that allows students to be able to bring complaints against institutions that haven't sort of fulfilled the terms of their contract to that individual. So again, it's very student focused, and the reason and rationale behind the OIA is to raise the quality of the institutions and the way they interact with the students. So I think those two bodies on their own show why I'm interested in this. But actually, the reason I mentioned the Crick and Turing Institutes is that they were brand new types of institution. These are based on some of the American research institutes, like the Woods Hole Institute, for example, is probably very well known. And they were bodies that started very small, but are now very large. In fact, I mean, the turnover of them, I think, is in excess of £200 million. So you can see how I'm interested in taking a body that's from very small, from startup stage, to something that could have real scale, because we're not just looking at the British market here, we're looking at the international market as well. And I think the needs of British universities are the same as the international university marketplace. So I think it is something you could scale up and apply around the world.
Thanks, Glynne. Nolan, turning to your marketing background now, what is it that you feel that you can bring to GERSA?
It's an interesting one because there's a distinct marketing challenge here that I think I can potentially, or hopefully, answer in a way that makes it a success, and it's probably what appeals to me most about the prospect is this challenge, and it's an interesting one because we need to get across that this is for the benefit of the global industry, which it is. We need to promote it and sell it to universities. We need to get agents to believe in it and want to interact with it. And we need to get students to ask for it. So it's a really interesting challenge. I mean, I've been working in marketing for 25 years and I've run my own agency for the last 10 of those in various forms. And invariably, my job entails taking a product or service or thing from a manufacturer or from someone, and then telling stories about it to the person who's going to buy it. It's a relatively linear path in more ways than one. What we're kind of doing here is, and what's really interesting about it is we're kind of throwing a blanket across the entire industry, but the people we're talking to all need very different messages around what it is that we're looking to do. So it's a really interesting challenge from my perspective, and it's one that really excites me, which is kind of the reason I'm here. It's something that is going to do amazing good for a huge number of people, and that as well is something that I it feels good to be working on something like this. Whereas if you're trying to sell a product made by a huge manufacturer, it doesn't quite have the same good feeling.
Sure. And I'm going to come back in a moment to the question of marketing to consumers around the world and the challenges that throws up B2C. Before I do that, Glynne, I think a few people who are listening today may A, wonder what general counsel is, and B, why doesn't GERSA need a general counsel? So can you try and elaborate?
Yeah, I can do. Okay, of course I can do. So a general counsel is just a very grandiose title for the person who's responsible for the internal legal function within an institution. Many British universities, and in fact universities around the world, have general counsel, as do many of pathway providers as well here in Britain. So what the general counsel does is responsible for the internal legal function. Sometimes a team of people working under them, depends on the size and scale of the institution. And also they choose which work to keep in-house and which to outsource. And that is around skills, expertise, and cost. I mean, those are the three factors that come to play. So it's a kind of interesting role where the general counsel fulfills a legal function, him or herself, but also is responsible for the oversight of external legal work as well. So that's what a general counsel is. In terms of why does GERSA need a general counsel, I think that actually there's so much law and regulation in what GERSA is looking to do, not just in a UK context, but around the world as well. So if you think about it, what GERSA is seeking to do in trying to help on the recruitment of international students via the agents to the UK and other markets, impacts on so many areas. So from an institutional point of view, there's the compliance with the OFS regulations, the law that applies to institutions itself, there's consumer law of the student contracts, there's data protection, there's freedom of information. And that's just looking at it from the institution's point of view. Then we come to look at it from the agent's point of view. There's the due diligence around them. There's how they're set up from a governance point of view. There's the funding that sits behind them. And there's, from their point of view, the compliance that they have with the local laws and regulations that applies to them. So trying to bring all of those into one pot, I think is going to be a real challenge, and is why I'm really keen to be involved. I mean, GERSA is involved in so many different legal areas. So from a lawyer's point of view, it's great to be able to sort of look at and interact with so many different, legal touch points, isn't it? So I think that's really key to why GERSA needs a general counsel and why GERSA couldn't simply outsource all of its legal needs. I think trying to find a firm that can manage all its legal needs will be very hard because they are worldwide and very diverse. So having somebody who's responsible for bringing all that into one place and frees you as the CEO up, Nick, so you haven't got to sort of worry about that, I think is quite important as well.
So I can sleep easy at night, can I?
You can sleep easy. Well, I must say easier. You can sleep easier.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's really helpful, and actually, I think will crystallize for a lot of people in their minds, some of the challenges we face and some of the complications that perhaps aren't obvious from the outside. So, Nolan, turning to you now. What are the marketing challenges for an organization like GERSA? Bearing in mind, we still have no budget and no money. And also bearing in mind that we have global ambitions which seek to reach the consumer, the students, at scale. And that's often a challenge that organizations shy away from because it's incredibly expensive and difficult to do.
It's a great question. I think there's a way perhaps of framing it in a slightly different way, in that most marketing, the majority of marketing is obviously storytelling. And what you're doing is you're giving the value of the product or service that you're selling. You are giving that value or telling people about that value. So from my perspective, the challenge for us isn't easy, or it's both easy and difficult, I suppose is the best way to put it, because we know that what we're doing is incredibly valuable for the wider industry. It's incredibly valuable for the consumer, as the students are. It's incredibly valuable for the institutions, because we're removing that due diligence piece and duplication of efforts and various other things that we are doing for them. So it's incredibly valuable for them. It's also incredibly valuable for the agents, because they're the people that connect, the different, they're the glue they're the oil in the system kind of thing. So our challenge isn't so much about sort of addressing everyone as if they're every sector, every sort of pillar as it with different messaging. The messaging is the same. It's the value of what we bring, and I guess from my perspective, it just comes down to making sure that we are getting that value across, so as institutions understand what it is we are doing for them. As I said previously, the students can understand that this is something they should be asking for. This is something they should be expecting. And actually, in so many other industries, it is already, they don't even ask for it because it's already given. It's, education, the international education industry is quite unique in that because it's grown sort of piecemeal, it hasn't had that accreditation piece in the middle to kind of protect everyone. And in terms of the agents, it's letting them know that actually this is going to make their life easier. GERSA for is a salve for the industry to a certain extent. It fixes so many problems, and if everyone's above board and everyone's behaving themselves and everyone's doing exactly what they should be doing, well, then it just makes everyone's life easier. That's the core thing here. So yeah, there's a challenge, but I don't think it's one that his famous last words. I don't think it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult, but it's just going to be about getting the message out at scale and making sure people understand what it is we're offering.
Great. I'm going to ask one other question about that, which
Go on, then.
is GERSA wants to be approved of and supported by governments and government agencies. Is there such a thing as marketing to governments?
Yeah, very much so. But it's the value proposition. Again, we come back to value. If we are marketing to governments, we're telling the story of the value we're bringing to the wider industry. If you're a government and you're looking for a solution, and let's face it, all of those destination countries are looking for something. It is a mess at the moment in lots of ways. Everyone is looking for a solution to various problems. As a government looking at this, it doesn't surprise me that everyone we've spoken to so far who's had kind of like awareness of what GERSA is trying to do, everyone said, yeah, brilliant, great. There's never been I don't know. We've never had that response. Everyone's been, actually, this solves a huge amount of problems, and I think it's really telling that that's been our response so far. It's only ever led to more conversations, whereas very often when you're trying to sell something or you're trying to promote something and send it into a business, the immediate answer is no, and then the work then is trying to get past that initial no. We've never had an initial no. Everyone we've spoken to about it has said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's, tell me more.
I've sort of got this vision going on, and the half dozen of us founders parading outside the Houses of Parliament with sandwich boards over our shoulders with various GERSA slogans.
Absolutely.
Now, more seriously, Glynne, I happen to know that you recently retired as a partner and head of the education practice at Eversheds. You're also doing a PhD in law on a part-time basis. Most people would say, well, aren't you going to play golf for the rest of the week? But more seriously, you don't have to be doing this. So what is your motivation to get involved with GERSA?
It's a good question, Nick. Firstly, I don't play golf, so golf is not an option for me. But I guess sort of more importantly, I think what I really like about GERSA is it's novel. As a lawyer, you can find that you can do the same thing over and over again. There can be an element of mundane work, of routine work about it. But actually, what I like about GERSA is it's really there, novel, at the cutting edge. It's going to do something different. And actually, from my point of view, to be able to make a difference at the end of my career, let's be honest, I am at the end of my career, to be able to find something that I think, will actually make an impact going forward and will make a real positive change to the higher education sector, which I've spent 25 years working in, on a more than full-time basis, so it feels. I think the chance of doing that, particularly with all of the sort of laws that I talked about and the sort of, huge amount of law and business and practice and trying to bring all that into one place, I think is what really gets me out of bed. I've always loved my job. You've known that. I chose to spend hours with you in darkened rooms. I could not have chosen if I wanted to. I could have done something different, couldn't I? So this is a chance to spend some more time with you, Nick, in some darkened rooms, but this time for the positive good of Great Britain and the rest of the world.
Just to jump in on that, I think there's a really interesting piece in that, Nick. Sorry to jump in, and Glynn, you said the word impact,
Yeah,
and I think it's a really interesting word because you've clearly had impact across your entire career. You look at your greatest hits. There's a huge amount of impact, and I think it's really telling. And from my perspective, as one of the founders of GERSA, it's great that you would choose to be involved because you see the same potential for impact there.
I do.
Like
So,
that. That is
And Nolan, there's sort of, those really interesting jobs that I've been involved with in my career. I've done it from the outside. This time I have a chance to do it from the inside to really help to sort of the building
yeah.
blocks to work with the founding team and to get it really up and off the ground on a longer term basis as well. Because
And yeah,
lawyers is quite short term, you're in and out on a deal or a particular piece of work. And often you don't hear again from the client because they're not going to phone you up to give you an update because they think you're going to be charged for that. So, it's actually, they only phone you up if they want you to do the piece of work. Whereas if
yeah,
you're on the inside with the team, then you can help for the team to understand legal issues in advance of that legal issue coming up and causing an issue, a
fantastic.
problem for the institution. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Nolan, you're not an old codger in the twilight of his career,
No,
as Glynn and I are. It's quite different for you. You're halfway through your career. So in
God,
many
am I
ways,
only halfway through? Is it only halfway?
Sorry, Nolan.
It's taking forever.
but in many ways, it's a less obvious move for you to make. So I'm really interested in what is motivating you to put behind your previous career and focus on what we're doing.
Well, it's an opportunity to do something really great. I think most marketers or marketeers makes me sound a bit like a musketeer. Most marketers, we don't you don't get it's not burnout, but there's it clients come to us and they say, I need you to help me sell this. I need you to create the storytelling around this product and tell and make sure it's connecting with our client base so that we sell lots of X or get loads of orders of Y or whatever it is. And it's you're always enthusiastic because you always have to be enthusiastic about what it is your clients are looking to achieve. But when someone comes along and they say, like you did some time ago now, Nick, you came to me, and in our regular, pub sit down of an evening, every quarter, you sat down, I've got this idea for a thing, and this is what it's going to do, and here's a single piece of A4 with what the idea is, and again, much like Glynn in the darkened room, it was a darkened pub in the middle of winter, and I was like, that's brilliant. I want to do that. So it was it a conscious decision? Yeah, I suppose it was a conscious decision to be involved because it's like it's something incredibly meaningful, and it's being able to sit back and go, I did that, and that's made a real difference to an awful lot of people's lives. And when you read the horror stories, and it's stuff I wasn't aware of because our listeners, I don't know if they know, but I'm not from sector. I'm from the commercial world. I've been working for for global brands for a long time now. 25 years is in when I started my career. Yeah, it's nice to be able to sort of look back and go, okay, I've helped fix a really major problem, and the horror stories I've read since I've been involved have been awful. The thing that happened in Canada, I think in 2023, with students committing suicide. It's like you read that and you go, how can that happen? How is it that it happened in 2023? How is it in 2023 that this can happen? That people can be that badly missold, and the reality of it is it can happen because there's nothing there to protect people. There's nothing there to say, this is how you work. This is how the agencies need to work. This is how the industry needs to work. And to be involved in something like that is really fulfilling. And just, I know we're not operational yet, and we're not quite there yet, but just the feedback we've had so far has been amazing. Like, on a daily basis, we get emails, and it's, people are like, this, I can't believe this is happening now. This is so timely. This is exactly what we've needed for some time. And, from an outsider looking in, to a certain extent, it's like, this is the kind of project, this is a dream project to be involved in from a marketer's perspective. So that's why I'm doing it.
And if I can just ask you further to elaborate on that. You said you've been a corporate, as it were, corporate commercial marketer. What is it about? Is there any part of the international piece here that resonates with you?
It's a funny one because it's all because of the nature of the industry. It's a global village. What I've been quite taken with is this idea that to a great extent, everyone kind of knows everybody else, or knows of everybody else. So yes, there is this big international piece, but the industry is a bit of a village. And there are, everyone knows all the players, everyone, for good or bad, everyone knows everybody and the companies involved in the industry. From an international perspective, it's a great one to work on because the scales are so different. If I'm selling a fast-moving consumer good product from, a big manufacturer, and they're looking to sell, 100,000 a month, then I know the volume that I need to get. There is a kind of an algorithm in terms of the number of eyeballs I need to hit with content in order to generate those sales. Right? That's something that can be kind of extrapolated and measured. Here, we are going to be doing highly targeted content, for specific job titles on LinkedIn, whilst also potentially doing ads on TikTok for everyone aged 17 to 19 in a destination. It's a really interesting one because it's like, yes, there's this scale here, massive scale. We need to get as many people to see and understand that this thing exists and that they need to ask for it. And at the other end of the scale, we need to be getting really, really specific core messages in front of the people that make decisions about whether or not, GERSA is incorporated. And yeah, it's a brilliant challenge. And international is a weird one for most marketers because we're kind of working on an international basis anyway. If I'm putting ads out targeting a job title on or an interest on Facebook, chances are it's going to be seen by a really broad international audience anyway. If the client is selling internationally. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So let's get to the here and now. And I'm going to ask you both what you're working on and what we can expect to hear about in the near future. So turning to you, Glynne, what in respect to GERSA anyway, what are you currently working on, and what can people expect to hear about from us between now and, let's say, Christmas?
So you have told people that we've now set a company up. So GERSA has been founded. I was involved in drawing up the articles, the constitution for it. I mean, it's been set up on a not-for-profit basis. I think that's important to say. And now what we're trying to do is to convince the UK government to grant a Royal Charter to it, because we think if we can grant a Royal Charter, get a Royal Charter for GERSA, that will really give it the sort of status and the impact, Nolan, to actually take GERSA to the next stage. There is a route to doing that. It's called the state-sponsored route, and we're asking the government to to give support to it. Nick has been talking to sort of various civil servants at government departments who have been very supportive of what GERSA is seeking to achieve. So we hope that actually we may be able to move that forward. So I hope to be able to report more on where we are with the Royal Charter. Clearly, as Nick has already said, we need to make sure that we can fund it. Without funding, GERSA isn't going to get very far. So I expect to be involved in business planning and actually raising the funding for it. And that, again, I would hope we could put into place at least as to initial funding in the next few months. And then what I want to start working on is looking at the templates that would sit to actually set the structures up here. So the policies, the procedures, the due diligence checklist, the flow charts, working with maybe some software developers to actually create all the infrastructure to make sure that what GERSA is trying to do, we can set up in a sound way, in a sound and robust and reliable way as well. So that, I think, is what I'll be working on over the next, say, 6 months.
Excellent. Thanks, Glynne. For some reason, I just got it in my head right now why you need a general counsel. And you'll remember all that work we did reversing setting up the office in Moscow for CEG, because I hadn't consulted a general counsel and it had gone all the wrong way.
I'd forgotten that until now, actually. You're right.
Nolan, I think perhaps some people will probably know what you've been working on because we're trying to make a bit of a noise. But what is it that you're working on, and what more can people expect in the run up to Christmas?
So a ton more in terms of what more can you expect from us. A lot more storytelling around the why GERSA exists and how we're going to be doing things. I think in terms of what I've actually been working on, it's the planning piece, figuring out where we're launching this and working with the team internally to figure out where, what jurisdictions are we actually going to launch this in? How are we going to go to market in those locations with the messaging, and then looking at the demographics that we need to hit, the people we need to be talking to, figuring out where they are, where do they spend their time, what are they interested in, what's going to move the needle in terms of messaging for those people. So it's quite broad at the moment, but I'm trying to keep it. As focused as possible. I'm also learning all of the acronyms. So as someone who works in marketing, I'm used to acronyms, right? It's ROAS, ROI, all those different things. But WTF, there is an awful lot of acronyms in education, and every call I get on, I'm like while everyone is talking, I am Googling what that is. Invariably. So I'm learning the acronyms at the moment. A big part of what I'm doing.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, we're going to wrap up soon. In the interests of brevity and people's attention, so I'm going to come on to one final question, which is personal actually in some ways. But what, in your view, is the most exciting thing that GERSA can deliver? Nolan, I'm going to stick with you and then come back to Glynne.
Real change. Like that. It's as simple as that. And in terms of what moves the needle for me in terms of my interest, it's real change. I love working with mission-driven businesses, and GERSA is, I've helped found the company with you. And it has a mission. It's seeking to, I don't want to sound flippant, but change the world. And to a certain extent, that's what excites me. It's an opportunity to make something really, really special that improves a huge amount of people's lives. So no small mission.
Great stuff. And Glynne, let's finish off with you.
So very similar. I would say step change, Nolan. I mean, real change, step change. I mean, I think GERSA got it right. It would be a step change from an institutional point of view and from a student's point of view as well. I mean, rather than having sort of little mini industries within each institution, if we can help them to be cost effective, to be more efficient, I think it's going to really help the international education sector. So that's what I'm looking to be involved with. I'm looking for some real step change here, and I think that the GERSA could make that change.
Glynne, I think you and I understand, and Nolan understands, but when you talk about efficiencies for institutions, how does that come?
So what I mean by that, Nick, is that institutions at the moment are having to hire people within the institution who actually whose part of their role, and it's often only part of their role, is to vet agents, to vet students, to carry out due diligence of various types without any particular background in any of this stuff. And they're doing it in their own way. Often they're doing it as part of another role. They may not even have joined the institution to actually do this. Somebody says, this is what we need to do. The OFS is imposing some regulation on them to do that, or some other law or regulation is. So I think if we can help institutions not to have to hire, 150 institutions hiring 2 or 3 people doing the sort of similar sort of role, and actually we can sort of push through, particularly I think using some AI tools as well. We haven't really talked about AI, but AI does feature in this, I think, then actually it's going to help the institutions, not just from a cost point of view, but actually from a timing point of view, from an efficiency point of view as well, because students aren't applying often to one institution, they're applying to many institutions. So there's a lot of effort, which is a wasted effort, because they're actually looking to interact with agents who may or may not ever steer any students their way. So they're carrying out the due diligence up front in the hope that some students will flow. And often the number of students or the type of students don't flow in the way that they expect.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that's a very good point. And this is one for another day, I think, but also the levels of bad debt that come through the bad actor agents are disproportionately high.
Yes, exactly.
No surprise, right?
Exactly.
So there are all kinds of things like that. Okay, I think we better call it a day. That's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope that this edition of GERSACast has given you further insight into what GERSA is, will be doing, and the people who are driving it. In the next edition, we'll be turning the tables a little with a thoroughly politically correct panel of Birgit Hurst and Paige Grinter, the final members of the founding team. If you want to know more about GERSA, please see our website at www.gersa.org or reach out to me, n.golding@gersa.org. Thank you for listening.